it's really an honor to be here, to have you, and to be able to speak with Nate Gray, who's our special guest today. Nate, I'll tell you a little bit about Nate's background and his company, but I think you'll find this a very, very enjoyable conversation. And please, as we're going through, if there are any questions, just make sure you put them into the chat function, and we'll get to as many as we can. The format for today basically is I'll be asking a couple of just general questions to give you a sense of what all the great things that Nate is up to, and then we would like to open it up for you guys to participate. So, but don't be shy. We don't bite, and we love questions. So anyway, to get started, let me introduce Nate. Nate Gray is the CEO of Wingnut Digital, a rewards-based gaming company. He's an innovator, investor, and advisor who, as a child of the gaming boom, developed a lifelong fascination with the ways games tie together engineering, storytelling, and design, among other disciplines. Nate's experiences include traveling extensively in Spain and Eastern Africa, serving as an international instructor in Shanghai, and working at some of the big five publishers where he edited the books of such literary luminaries as satirist Christopher Buckley, essayist Christopher Hitchens, and former U.S. Senator and presidential candidate, the late John McCain. Nate holds a BA from Harvard and has completed finance coursework at NYU. So welcome, Nate. Thanks for coming.
Hi, Philip. Thank you for having me. And Regina, thank you for having me as well.
Oh, so glad to have you on this call today, Nate.
And
absolutely.
Also wanted to make just a quick shout out. All of you. I'm not sure if this is your first office hours with us, but we have a pretty exciting month ahead. Lots and lots of activity. Please check out our newsletter and sign up for some of we have podcasts, and we have several office hours and several other events coming up. We also have a special thing happening for Christmas, and I encourage you to check your email from this morning and buy your entrepreneur t-shirt. This is great Christmas gift for yourself and all of your friends and family. And so please, there's also a link on LinkedIn as well as on Facebook. Is there am I missing anything else, Regina?
No, they can also reach us at info@harvard.ae, and we'll send them the link directly. So,
fantastic.
The funds go to support HAE. As everyone knows, we're a 100% volunteer organization. This year, we have hosted to date over 100 events. We'd love your support. So.
Thank you. And Regina, by the way, you should introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Regina Ryan. Some of you know me. Angel, good to see you. David Yoon, I see so many familiar names here. I'm the president of Harvard Alumni Entrepreneurs. Sometime in the last year or two, you've probably gotten an email from me. So nice to see you on. And as this session goes through, please turn your cameras on so we can see you. We'd love it. Thanks. Okay, on with Nate.
Excellent. Thank you, Regina. So just to give you just a little background on Nate's company. So Wingnut Digital is a very innovative game company with insofar as typical games will give you an extra life, or you'll get an extra set of swords, or but Wingnut actually gives you real life, real world rewards. So anyone can pay for free, and subscribers win prizes as they play. So let's start with this. Nate, tell me about how you came up with the idea for Wingnut, and tell us a little bit about what your experience has been so far.
Sure. Maybe I'll sort of talk about my earliest experience with gaming, and it might be similar to other people's early experiences with gaming. I'm originally from the Midwest, and I grew up during the gaming revolution, the boom, at the very time when video games surpassed the Hollywood film industry as sort of the billion-dollar blockbuster business. Um, and Essentially what gaming did for me is that showed me that there was a world outside of sort of the limited sphere that I was in, the little limited circle I was in. It let me connect with other people in different parts of the country, and it allowed me access to stories, stories that I wouldn't have otherwise learned about. Um, uh, I mean, in sort of my limited worldview of different cultures and of different ways of thinking. So that is sort of my first experience with video games. I think a sort of a current example of a good sort of different story these days would be PlayStation's Miles Morales game. It's a new Spider-Man game. When I was growing up, I didn't see any minority superheroes, right? And I didn't learn about superheroes, or I didn't know what it was like to grow up in a non-suburban world. But the Miles Morales Spider-Man game sort of brings you into that world. And there's sort of a multimedia aspect to it too, because there are comic books and movies and other things like that, and it helps bring you into that. But I think for me, and I was actually talking with Regina about this earlier. Video games, they're sort of the great equalizer, right? You don't have to be the star quarterback to be a star quarterback, right? You can play a game and be just as successful as a pro. Actually, you can be more successful than a pro in certain cases. So that's what's sort of nice about it. And I have a theory about how video games sort of empower introverts, right? They empower people who might not have a voice before. So that's one of the things that drew me to video games. The other thing that sort of drew me to thinking about this world of video games was that there is a lot of time spent in front of a screen. There's a lot of time just sort of sitting down and being passive. And with my company, I wanted to change that. I wanted video gaming to have a social aspect that's both digital, that's through the internet, but also an aspect to gaming where you get out. And so the prizes you win with Wingnut, they force you to go spend your prizes. So go get a coffee or go to maybe an escape the room game. Obviously, this is because of the COVID climate these days. That's not, those things aren't happening. But when things reopen again, we'll see that happening more often. And then one more thing about connectivity, and then I'll let Phil fire off another question. Philip fire off another question? It's some of the statistics about how gaming brings people together. Some of the statistics are really staggering. In 2020, there's a statistic that 30% of gamers have met a good friend, like a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or even a spouse online. That just didn't happen 20, 30 years ago. Then 40% of gamers say they have met someone online that they would otherwise not have met. And that's also staggering. I mean, I think that's phenomenal, because it's not only letting you find love, which is fantastic, but it just opens your eyes to new ways of thinking.
Yeah, that's super interesting. One of the things that I was struck by in our conversation in for our podcast, which, by the way, I would encourage you all to listen to if you haven't heard. Nate and I chatted some months ago, and one of the things that struck me was the interconnectedness of so many different fields, and I'd love you to talk a little
Oh
bit
yeah.
about your background in terms of storytelling and design, and as I mentioned in the introduction, just this cross pollination that happens, and also the fact that these are so interconnected. So, can you talk a little bit about your background, the importance of storytelling? What are those linkages?
Yep. So besides having an interest in video games, I'm also a notorious dabbler, a little of a dilettante. And so that means I have interests in all sorts of things, for better and for worse. Many of the times it's to my detriment. Uh, but why the world of gaming is so interesting to me is because it's almost made for dabblers. It's made for people who have different interests. And so I before I became an entrepreneur, I had all types of jobs. I worked with security guards. I worked in publishing. I traveled a bunch. I worked as a teacher. So I had sort of exposure to a lot of different industries. But my time in publishing um, really made me aware of the power of stories and the power of scripts to and the power of writing to sort of help superpower your entrepreneurial journey, or sort of boost your dreams, right? If you can articulate what you're dreaming on paper, if you can articulate your vision in that way, you can make it real. You can lay out a framework and a plan and take steps to pursuing it, right? So it really is about sort of articulating a vision on paper. But back to what Philip was saying, the other thing that interested me was that I can't think of a discipline. I actually want to sort of challenge people. I want to challenge people to think of a discipline that won't possibly fall under the video game umbrella. Like, I can't think of anything that either can't be turned into a video game, or that can't or a profession that a video company can't hire to serve as either a consultant or an actual part of the video game. Like, I really racked my brain. I thought, oh, quilting. No, quilting has nothing to do with the realm of video games, right? It's for old quilting circles in the park with grandmas. But then there's this video game called Sackboy, and it's about people made out of quilts, and it's about a quilt world, right? And so you bring in they must have brought in some sort of quilting consultant. Maybe they played with balls of yarn, I don't know. But it's just fascinating that you can if you need to design a game about a Jurassic Park game, you hire an archaeologist as a consultant, right? If you design a game about Batman, you hire DC Comics. The X-Men, you hire Marvel Comics. So that's also fascinating to me. And I can't think of another industry that is so expansive in that way.
Absolutely. And I would also add that it's big business. I mean, this is a huge industry. and talk to us a little bit about the industry. And then I'd love to hear a little bit. I think everyone would love to hear a little bit more about how how your game works and why it's different. So I thought it was I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, so it's entertainment and gaming has been around forever. It's been around since the gladiator days, as many people know. Um, and but it's just taking on new forms these days, and better and safer forms. In the I like to cite Nintendo as one way that video gaming has changed. Right, Nintendo started out as a trading card company, as a card company, not digital at all, right? And it recently pivoted to, not recently, but it pivoted to um, uh, technology, right? And now it's one of the, obviously we know it's one of the biggest companies in the world, and one of the best known companies in the world. Um, but they, and the reason I cite that is because these game companies, they're so big, yet they have to be so nimble at the same time, right? They have to, when a new trend comes along, they have to embrace it, because gamers are impatient. They won't stand for things being old news. So that's and that's why these game companies have to be so big, in the billions of dollars, right? That's why they have to grow to be the size they are. Um, and um, uh, and it's also why the notion of celebrity is changing, right? Before, I was actually talking with Regina a little bit before this call, uh, and video games were a male-dominated industry for a while, as was all technology, and that's changing for the better. And it sort of goes back to my point about video games being an equalizer, empowering introverts, especially women. I'm not saying women are all introverts and men are extroverts. That's hogwash. I'm just saying that sometimes in the real world, it's can be more difficult for women to have a voice when men are shouting, right? So that's always tough. And then there's a flip side, though. There's the dark side of the web. There's the dark side of video games, right? And so you always have to be aware, cognizant of the bullying that can happen, right? And this isn't just about misogynistic bullying or bullying against kids, or it could be, anyone can be bullied, especially online, right? And you could be bullied by someone who's anonymous. And so one of the responsibilities of video game companies is not to play the police, but just monitor, right? And make sure the content is acceptable for everyone. And that the people who have signed up for, if there is controversial content, the people who have signed up for it are aware that they've signed up for it, right? So that's also something.
How
Go ahead. Yes.
yeah, I'm curious about, so how do the companies control that, and in general, is it
Usually they usually have a team. And
okay.
usually they have a team that looks for the content and monitors. But there are famous examples of people missing things all the time, especially since it's so new and so expansive. It's more people are logging on, so you have to be aware of it. Yeah.
I have a quick question, a little off topic in where we are now. Look at video games. In the beginning, it was shoot 'em up, drag racing, and now you're telling me that there's quilting video games, which is impressive. But the big piece for me is asking the question, how has it changed learning, right? Has it impacted how kids learn in any way?
Yes. Sorry, you had a little bit of an echo there, but I think I got your question. So one thing I would like to talk about is when you talk about games and gaming, it's interesting because there's a new game. I'm sure most people have heard about this, the new gamification trend.
Yeah.
With everything, right? So and it's not limited to really any industry. It's you can have sort of the gamification of conservation,
Right.
gamification of dating, gamification of, in your case, pertinent to your question, education,
Right.
right? So education has definitely changed, especially nowadays, as we see. There are, you know, a lot of online courses that have that allow students to interact directly with learning, right? And the most we had when I was growing up was a typing game, right? That allowed you to learn how to type by turning it into a competition with yourself. But you know, the possibilities today are endless, and it's for the better, since so much more schooling is at home,
Right.
especially now. And many programmers are self-taught. Male and female programmers are self-taught, and there are. I think Steve Wozniak launched a camp or an academy, a WozU, I think he calls it, to entice these new gamers and draw them in. And sorry, new engineers. I said new gamers. I meant new engineers. So yes, it's big business. The ed tech sector is a huge business, especially nowadays.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, because you know, when we think of this world, it's, as you said, it touches everything.
Mm.
And it could really be something that allows people to learn in different ways, when before it was much more narrowcast.
Yeah.
And that's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Well, there have been studies done where the that show that the size of a classroom is directly related to the success of the student.
Oh,
A
yeah.
smaller classroom almost always ensures a more successful student, and fuller human. That's just that sort of should be common knowledge, because you know, you get more interaction. And the great thing about sort of games is that you can have a teacher guiding a student through a game one-on-one. And you know, the teacher can, you know, you can have a French teacher be in France, right? while they're teaching the student, which obviously could never happen before. I know it's a little bit off topic, but it's really interesting. It also has to do with the gamification of everything, and of entertainment as well. And yeah, it's just so interesting.
So one of the things that, thank you for that, that's a really helpful, some helpful insight there. I wanted to ask you about, you know, the gamification as a macro trend, obviously is a critical one. What other trends are you seeing in the industry?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one of the sort of more interesting trends that, so there are all sorts of ways you can experience gaming, right? You can, there's mobile gaming, there's console gaming, there's VR, AR. And I think the sort of the next big thing might be haptic technology, where you don't just see your games, you don't just hear your games, but you feel your games, right? You put on wearable tech, and it brings you into the game. They use haptic technology and a lot of military training routines, because in training, you can't actually get shot, right? But you can feel like you got shot with wearable tech that buzzes you when you're tagged, so to speak, right? So I think that's one of the sort of more innovative things that's happening in training and gaming. And the reason I'm talking about training and gaming interchangeably is because they sort of are interchangeable, as Regina mentioned earlier.
Right.
They're sort of gaming by its very nature is learning. And so if you start at a young age, I think that's all the better, and empowers you more, gives you the tool. So haptic technology is one, and that includes other areas of recreation, which like virtual vacations, right?
Right.
They already have sort of virtual vacations now, but it's just going to become more real, right? You'll use this haptic technology. You'll jump in a pool and get wet. You'll jump in the ocean, get wet, right? You'll have the feeling of putting on a scuba suit, right? You might even have the feeling, this might be a crazy idea, of experiencing the bends or something if you scuba, right? So it's an incredible. There are obviously incredible opportunities with this wearable tech, right?
Although I must say, Nate, I really would prefer to be on the beach in St. Bart's than look
I
at it
know,
through.
I know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know.
right, right. Now, you had made, I know you're based in LA, and we had discussed on the podcast the kind of and you to discuss during earlier the linkages between the entertainment industry and also the gaming industry. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and how being in LA is helpful, how that ecosystem is helpful for your work?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think I mentioned this a little bit before, but there are games, gaming and film have become so enmeshed that you can't separate the two. And stories are just becoming so important. I mean, there are some games that are really just stories. They're just animated stories, which they're choose your own adventure. I'm thinking of the Telltale Games. It's a company near us, where you play as Batman, or you play as a superhero. Um, so in that way, they're very connected. And then you see, as I was saying before, you see these celebrities, you see these influencers starring in video games,
Right.
making cameos in video games, and which I think is again fantastic. And again, it changes the notion of celebrity. It changes the notion of what it means to be a star, right? Because you can now engineer your likeness to be pasted on a video game avatar, right? Or you can create movies for yourself. So that's fantastic. I think that's fantastic. That sort of anyone and everyone can be a star, and it's not just limited to the few influencers that we always hear about. And this also connects to my time as being a writer, and writing and producing scripts. You learn the value. I mean, sometimes what separates a good game from a bad game, a good movie from a bad movie, is this. Actually, often what does, not sometimes, often is the script, right? And I don't know if you can say that about the music. Maybe you can. If the music's terrible, you can. Or if you can say that about about the acting, because a bad actor can recite great lines, right? but it definitely opens the door for people. And I'm now myself working on a script with a writer. Has anyone heard of the movie The
About
Current War?
No.
Oh, so The Current War, it stars Benedict Cumberbatch, Tom Holland, and a few others. And I'm working on with the producer of that movie to create our own story,
Wow.
and perhaps even turn it into a video game. But we are not. We haven't. Things are still up in the air in terms of how that's going to go. So,
Wow.
but please look up The Current War if you have a chance, and take a look, because it's really has some amazing visuals, some amazing story, and really good acting.
now, is this the same film script that you had mentioned to me, Nate, that you were beginning to work on, or is that a different project?
This is the one I'm producing. Yeah,
Oh,
that's the script I'm
excellent.
producing. The one I produced back then.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. So I want to make sure we have time for people to ask questions. Anyone have any questions for Nate about the industry, about his company? Go ahead. It's floor is open.
I'll lead it off for a quick one. Where do you see the opportunities happening, in entertainment, digital entertainment, and gaming?
Do you mean opportunities for investors, for engineers, or anything?
Startups.
Oh, for startups,
Yeah.
yes. As I said before, I think the haptic technology is hot right now.
Yeah.
And that's really where much of the growth is going to happen. But I think the great thing about the video game industry is that it's not limited to the size of your company.
Right.
You can be a small startup studio and do some really fun, interesting things. Or you can try to be the next Activision, right? The next, right? The next Sony PlayStation, I guess. So I think that's one of the areas. Haptic technology. Everyone says everything's going mobile, and that's true. But I wouldn't limit yourself to the mobile sphere at all, because there's so much more, and it's very easy to make something that is not mobile. Obviously, there are caveats to that. It's hard to make some haptic technology mobile, although that's changing now too.
Yep.
So,
Great.
yeah.
Thanks.
I had a question actually, just curious about the barriers to entry, and I know there are some mammoth companies that are out there in the gaming business, but as an industry, would you consider it a top heavy? In other words, three, 4, 5 major companies that dominate the market, or is it fragmented and the barriers to entry are creative, technological? How do you see it?
The barriers to entry, I think, are very much based on personnel, right? It's about getting really good engineers, wireframers, designers, storytellers to work on your game, right? Because you want to offer the greatest experience to your customers as you can, right? So obviously, for big video game companies, they have an advantage in that they can throw money at engineers, right? They can hire the best just by virtue of paying them a lot.
Yeah.
But do they have the culture that some of the startup studios have? The answer is probably not, right? I mean, what I think the big video game companies need to do is they need to cultivate subcultures within their big culture, because it's great to have a huge company culture. That's fantastic. But it's not sustainable. It's sort of like the United States, right? You can, every state is different, right? You can't have everyone agree on everything, as we've seen recently, right? So within the bigger culture, you need these sort of these subcultures, and sort of cultivating smaller companies within a company, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, just size alone could be stifling in terms of creativity, depending on how it's managed.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And again, all companies are just about people and getting the right people in there, to make the best uh, product possible, and not even just the best product. It's not necessarily about competing with the other guy. It's about, making something that the team can feel really good about, right? Because there's so much room for different types of games, as we've talked about before.
And where are the hotspots in the world? As you look across, I mean, where are the real? I mean, we know when we talk about tech, and we think of Silicon Valley, Austin,
Yeah.
Boston, etc. Where are the hotspots for gaming?
Definitely where you mentioned. In terms of where video game companies are sort of blossoming, yes, the sort of the usual suspects, I would say. San Francisco,
Okay.
Austin,
Yep.
you mentioned.
Yep.
Seattle and Baltimore are really, really strong tech hubs, and Boston as well. And that's obviously just in the United States.
What about overseas? Are there countries that are? I know
Yeah,
Korea is absolutely crazy for Korea and Japan.
Japan is huge. China needs to get over their censorship problem. They have to deal with that. But it really could be big in China, and there are a lot of Chinese gamers. There are a lot of engineering shops in India. The Ukraine is a really strong tech hub.
Yeah.
That another great thing about the sort of universal nature of gaming is that you could start up your own programming studio from anywhere these days, any country, as long as you can access the internet.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's small detail, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's necessary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, does anyone?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Yeah.
Hi. Thanks again, Nate. Appreciate all your insight and everything. Just to give you a little background, I'm in LA as well myself, although I travel around the world quite a bit. So I do real estate, private equity, and serial entrepreneur between the US and Asia Pacific. So I have a little bit of exposure to China, Southeast Asia, all of that. Question for you. In terms of gaming, verticals, right? Obviously, there are so many different platforms, but the verticals in terms of one obviously being content creation, which LA and Hollywood is a great area for. But how do you see the verticals in terms of like distribution? Are there opportunities there? And because of the various different platforms between whether it is online gaming, streaming, or the consoles, how do you see distribution playing a role in all this and the opportunities within distribution?
Yeah, I think in terms of just looking towards the future, I think more and more we're going to see downloadable content, downloadable gaming, and maybe less toward the console side. Now, I want to put a caveat on that because now with home delivery, it's very easy to get these new consoles. I think fewer people are rushing out to the store as I guess we just experienced Cyber Monday and Black Friday and all that. Fewer people are rushing out to the stores, so it's going to be more downloadable content, less console based, and again, mobile is always king. I think the distribution through mobile is a very sort of strong play for video game companies these days. Did that answer your question? If not, I'm happy to
No problem. Yeah,
something
for the most
else.
part, I
Yeah.
just wanted to kind of see where trends are. Obviously, I mean, with
Yeah.
all the, it's obviously, it doesn't look like any one platform is going to be completely dominating. So the
Yeah.
question is, existing wise, obviously, I think this gets into probably a much longer discussion too, because within different geographic regions, you're going to have different distribution issues as it relates to all of that too. And just didn't, want to just get your 2 cents in terms of where you saw things heading and where you're positioning yourselves as far as distribution goes.
Well, that's funny because we also face the problem of distribution, because there are people in parts of the world and parts of the country that can't always access the rewards that we offer, right? And so in that case, they get the gaming experience, and then we have to sort of offer the apology. The rewards will be offered. We'll come to you. We'll come to you when they're available, right? So that's just the nature of doing business, right? That's just the nature of video games. You have to work with what you're given, yeah, and with all the distribution advantages these platforms offer, there are the same amount of disadvantages. There's lag time, bad internet, as I said, rewards that aren't located in your area. So yes.
Oh, absolutely. So maybe our opportunity now is to start some type of collaboration with Starlink, so that we can get it really worldwide.
Yeah, exactly, right. Get worldwide distribution and exposure, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's I talk about exposure. I just want to touch on a trend that I've seen recently, and I've seen it just in my nephews, in my family. It's people making gamers into celebrities by watching them on YouTube, right?
Right.
By watching them, and it's a form of entertainment that's sort of, I call it unplanned entertainment, right? I call it there's no script, there's no cast, no characters, no planning, but these people sitting down playing video games and then commenting on the video games gets 50 million views, and that can be a small number, which I think is fantastic. It's really making a star out of regular players. And then there's also, you can also make a star out of pro players, like Fortnite's Ninja and the people who are actually good at actually video game experts. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. I hope I answered it.
Yes, thank you.
I have
Yeah.
a question for you, Nate, if that's all right. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time. My name is Angel. I'm a product manager with an AI marketing firm.
Yeah.
Wanted to ask you about the potential downsides of gaming in general. It provides the kind of stimulus that really nothing else can compete with. When Bill Gates was growing up, the coolest thing was learning to program on a really old machine, and now nothing can really compete with this. So what are your thoughts on, especially in children in the ed tech context, and also more broad than that, how can people kind of protect themselves from the kind of addiction that something so interesting and fun like gaming can provide?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, it all starts at the home. If it's I'll speak about sort of young children now at first, because in my opinion, they're sort of the easiest victims of either cyberbullying or sort of the downside to gaming. But it really starts at the home. Parents have to really monitor the content their children are viewing, and I think they are doing a successful job of this. There's a statistic that over 90% of parents who have children who game are aware of what their children are playing. So that's a really good start, right? It means that it is starting at the home, right? but that doesn't mean these video game companies don't have responsibility, should take responsibility for the content they put out. So putting out content that's both monitored and vetted. And it's not saying it can't be controversial and can't push buttons and can't make people sort of challenge people. That's not to say that can't happen, but they need to make sure that, you know, the audience that it's intended for is going to the correct audience, right? So that just means, you know, having stronger teams to monitor the community, right? And community managers in that respect. Yeah.
Excellent. And I had one question for you, Nate, as well, just on a similar topic. When you have young children, I know when we spoke on the podcast, you were telling me that which I found fascinating, was the age group and the demographics are expanding. So you have whereas we think of the gamer as the teenage male kid, that is actually shifting quite rapidly. So what have you noticed there? What are the trends there? Are we seeing obviously more women, younger, old? Talk to us a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the majority of gamers are 20 to 35, ages 20 to 35. There are a lot of younger gamers, but there are a lot of they're often monitored by their parents, and so can't spend as much time online as they would like. But I can mainly speak about what we've seen with our company and the demographics that sort of surprise us. So one of the demographics that surprises us is women who are, I guess for lack of a better word, I'll call them stay-at-home moms, right? Their kids are at school. They have the hardest job in the world, but they do have time on their hands when their kids go to school. They tend to have some extra income. And so we see these moms playing games much more than ever. And that's really fascinating for me, because just my mom never played video games, and also poo-pooed them a little bit. So it's always interesting.
Definitely not the stereotype that we have of a gamer.
No, exactly. Definitely not the stereotype. And then the other surprise demographic we have with our company are seniors. We find seniors playing the games more and more. Again, it's about time. And the people who aren't retired and don't have time on their hands, it's sort of interesting to sort of study like how they play. As you can imagine, most people play games after work or school, right? So that's about 51% of gamers play at work or school. 30% of gamers play when waiting for appointments or other obligations, and 20% play during sort of a break at work or school. 16% play when commuting. So that's really interesting. But I think in the future, it's going to be work and gaming are going to be indistinguishable, and gaming will be considered work, right? Because they can gamify your work, make it enjoyable, make it so you actually want to go to work. And not that you don't. I think a lot of people do. But those statistics will be skewed and interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question. Thanks for the questions, Philip. It's
yeah, no. Does anyone else
questions.
have any other any questions for Nate? I have one comment to make. I know your business is growing like bonkers, and can you talk to us about your business and whatever you want to share if uh, in a few minutes that we have, and how people can find out about you
Sure. I
and
mean,
your
you
games.
can. I mean, if you'd like to find out more about me in particular, you can just um, shoot me a message on LinkedIn, or you can contact HAE, and you can just schedule something with me. I believe it's totally free. I'm the entrepreneur in residence for Harvard Alumni Entrepreneurs, which is a wonderful organization. So please reach out to them if you can. And just in terms of my entrepreneurial journey and startup journey, first off, I encourage everyone to take the leap. It's not easy; it's an uphill battle, but it's rewarding. That said, it does take a degree of risk. Luckily, risk is in my DNA. I want to tell two stories that might be interesting that are irrelevant to everything we've talked about, but just to show what kind of risk my risk tolerance. I ran with the bulls in Pamplona, and I got bucked up in the air. A bull bucked me up in the air, threw me almost over the fence, and I had my 15 minutes of fame because I was on all the dailies the next day. All the Pamplona dailies had me on the front page of their newspaper. So that's sort of my tolerance for risk. And then a bit of my tolerance for risk is just setting off on this. I won't tell the other story because we don't have time and it's not
So
relevant.
will we have a Bull Pamplona game in?
I think that's in the cards right now.
Okay, that sounds good. That
Yeah.
sounds good.
And
So
then in terms of just my we're always looking for partnerships and other entrepreneurs to help accelerate growth. So definitely ping me. And we're just on a really fantastic, inspiring growth trajectory. So and it's great to be here and talk with all of you.
Thank you
thank
again.
you.
We'd love to connect
Yeah.
with you, especially since you're in LA anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, Edward. Yeah, reach out. I'm sure I can find you as well, Edward Chen. That's great. I'll reach out.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Before you
Well-
leave, Nate, I was thinking maybe there's a way of gamifying HAE.
Let's do it. I've got to. Let's put our brains together.
I'm
Let's put our
serious.
brains together.
Philip
Yeah.
knows that I'm serious, but
No, when she says things, she's serious. Yeah. Yeah.
I smile a lot, but yeah, I can.
Well, no, we'll put our brains, we'll put our heads together, and in the meantime, we can make a game out of selling those shirts, those new
Selling
shirts that you
those
have.
shirts, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was a great plug, by the way.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nate,
Yeah.
so much.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nate. Really, it was great to hear your insights, and it's for someone who's not a gamer. It's such a learning. It's wonderful to hear about how broad the industry is, and it's very enjoyable. So thank you for sharing all of your thoughts.
And thank I want to thank all the brave people who asked questions, because I know it's not easy to do, especially when you just have someone droning on up there and you're the outsider coming in. So it's not always easy.
All right.
All right.
Great, guys. Have a wonderful day. Thanks again, Nate. And we hope to have you back soon.